there because I forgot all that already. So it's going to be one of those days, but glad you could join us this morning. This is a unique opportunity. I think, it is a software or program that Frank has introduced to George and I. I know we met Frank. I met Frank again at the LSRPA conference recently. I think as LSRPs, the one thing I know that I struggle with at times is making sure to keep up with all my timeframes, my deadlines. When you trigger the need for vapor intrusion sampling, when you trigger the receptor evaluation, all those things that we trigger. My tracking device is Outlook and an Excel spreadsheet. I don't know what everybody else is using, but I think Frank has some solutions and some answers for us. If I continue to talk any longer, I'm trying to delay a little for George to get on, but I'm glad everybody is here. I know we had about 50, we're at 32 right now. There were some people who had struggled to get in, so hopefully everybody is getting in there. Come on, George. With that said, I also want to point out, if you are an LSRP, we are doing ethics training next month, July 19th, Jules, or 16th?
It's for the ethics, I believe it's the 19th.
19th, yep. Okay. It is a virtual class we do it in the morning. Highly recommend, if you are an LSRP and you are coming up for renewal, you definitely should get that out of the way, because that way you never have to worry about taking the class at the last minute, and you're good to go. So again, and the way we run these hot topics, you all are here. This is a meeting format. You have control over muting yourself, unmuting yourself, turning your cameras on, turning your cameras off, whatever you choose to do. All I ask is that we let Frank do his presentation. If you do have questions, and you can put them in the chat, I'll make sure that Frank answers them. If you have questions and want to raise your hand, I'll make sure that Frank answers those also. And, so I'm going to apologize, Frank, because it appears George is still having an issue getting in. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Do a little introduction of yourself, because George was going to do that, and I was hoping he'd be here to do that. He's not. And then it's all yours.
All right, no problem. Thanks so much, Phil. I appreciate it. So as Phil was mentioning, I'm Frank Preve, and my company is Aldoa. I'm part of a startup that is building tools specifically for the environmental consulting space. And our first focus of concentration in terms of developing tools has been for people that are in New Jersey, for environmental consultants and LSRPs that are in the Jersey area. And we've developed a number of compliance tools that are designed to make your guys' life easier. And so I want to go ahead and jump right into it. In terms of my background, I spent 10 years working out in Silicon Valley. I used to work at a company called Slack, which was a predecessor of Teams, essentially, and it's still widely used in the SaaS, software as a service space. I also was one of the original members of a company called Qualia, which was focused on vertical SaaS as well. And a number of the people that have created this company, Aldoa, have come from that company as well, Qualia, which was based out of San Francisco. So my background is in technology, developing technological platforms for specific verticals to help companies or individuals that are in a particular niche adhere to compliance, essentially. That's been my background and my professional development area. So, Phil mentioned, as you guys have questions, feel free to write them in here. If you have questions in the middle of this thing, feel free to chime in, because I don't want to sit up here and monologue the entire time. So if, I'm seeing some of the people here, we have Tim Rucka here, Ben Z's obviously here as well, and Chris Rotundi, Jim Geider, and anybody here, like Randy Schuler. You guys feel free to jump in and ask questions as I show this software, because we built it specifically for you guys. So I'm going to share out my screen here. Can everyone see this okay?
Looks good, Frank.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So this is Aldoa, right? And it's the first program that was built specifically for environmental consultants and LSRPs. Okay. And so the first thing that I want to talk about in terms of the program is that we developed this program to have a quick adoption rate. Essentially, we wanted people to be able to start leveraging the software very, very quickly and start being able to use it and apply its functionality right away. And the reason why we focused on developing a user interface that was as intuitive as possible is because everything that an LSRP does is valuable, right? Since everything operates off of billable hours, the way you use your time determines your effectiveness a lot of times as an LSRP. So we wanted to make the program as user-friendly as possible. We wanted as low of a learning curve or non-steep of a learning curve as possible. And so we focused on developing a user interface essentially that was highly adoptable. So here's what I mean by that. I'm in the Newark gas station. All the information on the left-hand side corresponds to this project that I'm in. My basic info, my properties, my contacts, my project finance, my compliance, my tasks and documents associated with this project. If I hit this tab here, all the information on the left-hand side corresponds to this project that I'm in as well. I'm in 3 projects at once. If I want to be in 4, I can be in 4 projects at once. The point is the same, is that when you want to look for something, you understand intuitively where to look for it, because we built this application in order to maximize the efficiency of one's time in the environmental consulting space. So let's say I'm Julianne, right? I'm Julianne Masalgo. Did I pronounce your name correctly, Julianne?
Yes, you did. Very good.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Awesome. So I'm Julianne. I'm logged in here. I'm in the Newark gas station. I can immediately see, okay, a description of the project. I can see any tasks that need to be done. I can see who's working on the project. And then we've built an integration with Google Maps so you can see the property from the software. Okay. From there, I want to get into the compliance portion of things that Phil was talking about. Okay. And I just want to open it up to some of the people that are on the line. Chris, are you an LSRP by any chance? Chris Watt? I don't know if Chris can unmute himself. He probably can. But I just want to open it up. Like Kevin, he looks like he's unmuted. Kevin, are you an LSRP by any chance? All right. Well, I guess
This is Alex. I'd feel free to volunteer.
All right. So you are an LSRP, Alex, right?
Sure.
Okay, cool. So how do you track what timeframes are due currently?
Right now with Aldoa.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. You leverage the platform as well. Okay. Excellent. So
Prior to that, combination of Outlook reminders and Excel spreadsheets similar to Phil.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you, Alex. So like the use of spreadsheets is almost universal, essentially. And the use of spreadsheets or reminders in Outlook was universal, and it's almost too much complexity to keep track of with a simple spreadsheet. So we built this program so that people that are environmental consultants and LSRPs can stay in compliance. And here's what I mean by that. So let's say Alex needs to track a time frame. He can log in here, right? And it says LSRP on the project. He can type in his name, right? And then from there, he can specify his mediums of contamination on a project. You can have soil, you can have vapor, you can have groundwater, you can have any combination of these. So let's say he sees both at the same time. Let's say soil and groundwater at the same time. From there, he can specify his case type, whether it's an ISRA, a regulated UST, or a spill act. Let's say this is an ISRA here. And then from there, he can specify his trigger date, okay? You can indicate what kind of case type it is or what kind of ISRA. Let's call it a change of ownership. He can put his PI numbers, his activity numbers, and his case tracking numbers and click start a new time frame. From there, everything is calculated for Alex automatically. He doesn't have to worry about building this out in a spreadsheet. Everything is done with calculations within the program that we've built ourselves. Okay. Chris Watt was typing in there. He said spreadsheet. Chris, it's universal. Everyone uses a spreadsheet essentially. So here we have something that replaces the spreadsheet for you guys. So Chris, let's say you had typed in your project in here You can see exactly all the timeframes that have come up, all of the regulatory mandatory timeframes. You can see the citations associated with it. If Chris is working on a project, he can put notes on it as well. And he says, I need to talk to Chris Rotundi about this. And then he can put his initials on it, CW. And then if Chris Rotundi is looking at the same project, he can hover over it and he can see the note that Chris Watts put on there, essentially, okay? So here we are, we're in the first facet of things. We're in preliminary assessment, right? This program will take you through every step of the time frame process, essentially, okay? And let's say Chris Watts here, he finds contamination after preliminary assessment, right? He needs to populate a discharge date and say, okay, this is the date that we found contamination. And then he's going to say, let's complete PASI. It'll ask Chris, was contamination found during PASI? He can say yes, complete PASI. And now he's moved from PASI to remedial investigation. Everything is updated for him, okay, as a result of that. So everything is the next step of timeframe requirements that's associated with remedial investigation is automatically updated. He can see the citations that are associated with the timeframes. And he can also put notes on it. He can check these things off as they're completed, okay, as he's completed these different tasks. He can always see what's been completed and what remains to be done as well. Okay. And then there's a lot of really cool things, or there's a lot of really powerful things that a user can do to keep track of some of the more complicated elements of time frame tracking. So if you have, for instance, IECs, if you have LNAPLs, if you have receptor evaluations, if you have site complexity factors, the program is designed to keep track of all that stuff for you guys, for sure. So let's say we have an IEC, right? Immediate environmental concern. The LSRP can click on this and say, when was the IEC identified? He can populate the date that the IEC was identified. He can indicate what type of IEC was identified. Let's say it was vapor intrusion, okay? I hear that direct contact never happens, by the way. It's all potable water or vapor intrusion, but let's say it is vapor intrusion in this instance. So we scroll down here and now we can see all the requirements created with the environmental concern. So Chris is no longer calculating this himself. It's being calculated for him, essentially. So he can check off the different activities as they're completed. Okay. Or he can have the completed activities removed from the list as well. And it's the same thing for any other exception that you might have, right? Or any type of site complexity factor that might exist. So let's say he has an LNAPL that he's found, right? He can click on LNAPL and it's going to ask him the date that the laboratory results identified in LNAPL. He can populate the date, right? And he can add it as a requirement. So just scrolling down here, we have the LNAPL requirements, right? He can check off when he's completed each of the requirements associated with the LNAPL. We can see that the regulatory and mandatory timeframes are calculated here, okay? And the program has this ability to basically proactively track those items for the user, essentially. And it's the same thing with permits as well, right? So let's say, an LSRP wants to track his biennial certifications. He can click here. He can populate his permit number or his or her permit number, the superseded permit number, the PI number, the permit medium, whether it's soil or groundwater. Let's do groundwater in this instance, the date that it was issued, the date that it was effective. And then here's the cool part. If a user doesn't know their anticipated expiration date, they can click this button and the program will calculate 30 years of permit data for them, essentially, right? If they want to track biennial certifications, they can do so by populating the first biennial certification date. If they want to track biennial inspection deadlines, they can do so as well at whatever frequency they occur. If they want to track financial assurance deadlines, they can. And then since this is a groundwater type permit, it can also track your well monitoring deadlines at whatever kind of weird interval they occur, because they happen at weird intervals, biennial, quadrennially, so on and so forth. That user can click add permit, and essentially all the permit deadlines are calculated for them as well, right? Once again, this takes the onus of having to calculate this stuff in Excel, having to update your Outlook calendar in order to track it, out of the hands of the environmental consultant and into the hands of the automation, for lack of a better expression. So with all of this stuff, you're capable of creating reminders, right? So it's not enough that you have to log into a software in order to track something that is due. You want that to be automated for you. You don't want to have to constantly be logging in and looking to see where something stands. If the program can proactively track it for you and let you know ahead of time, then that creates additional value for the user, simply because you don't have to worry about tracking it yourself. And here's what I mean by that. So with all of these deadlines, you can have notifications that are sent. So you can have, for instance, a notification that is sent 2 months ahead of time, or let's say 3 months ahead of time to all the different team members. And then an individual user can have their own notifications that are sent at a different interval, let's say 1 week ahead of time as well. So you can have multiple layers of notifications that are sent and that are delivered to the personal inbox of the user. And that enables you to be able to not even have to log into the software a lot of times, because you're seeing the notifications go straight to your phone, straight to your email, essentially, and you're being proactively alerted as to when these deadlines are occurring as well. Okay. So we've talked about timeframes, we've talked about permits. Another interesting thing that we've developed was this concept of task tracking, because we noticed that in addition to timeframes being tracked in a spreadsheet, there was no universal mechanism for an environmental consultant to track what work needed to be done on a project, right? So people were tracking it and project managers were tracking it in different ways. You have some that track it in a spreadsheet, some may download, they may take the information that's in the budget and use that to track the work that needs to be done. And what we've developed here is essentially, we've developed a series of different types of templates that can track work for you. So if you're doing, a due diligence project, for instance, you can type in what activities are associated with a due diligence project or an ISRA or a remediation project, whatever kind of project that you have. And then when you open up that project, let's say let's go to the New York gas station, you can specify, okay, this is, let's say, a due diligence project here. And if you go to your tasks, all the tasks are created for you for that project. So you have a universal means of tracking those tasks. And the power of this has to do with having a consistent means throughout the firm of understanding what needs to be done. Because right now, as it stands in the environmental consulting industry, for all of us, it's fragmented, right? It's essentially fragmented in the sense that every single project manager or LSRP uses their own personalized mechanism to track that. And the result of that is if somebody leaves, it's very difficult to have somebody come in and assume those processes that individual had put in place, because those processes were unique to that individual. And that issue extends to all forms of compliance, whether it's timeframes, whether it's permits, or whether it's the tasks and the work that needs to be done. With all of this stuff, guys, you can have views that are unique to the individual project, and you can also have universal views as well that extend across the entire firm, right? So you can see exactly everything that's coming up and everything that needs to be done, both from a task tracking standpoint and a regulatory standpoint, across the entire organization. Tasks that are overdue appear in red. And then you have the tasks that are coming up, obviously, are highlighted as well. You can see the projects that the tasks are associated with, and then you can understand who they're assigned to and change who they're assigned to, essentially. And you can also be an observer or a watcher of a task, meaning that you can say, all right, I want to not necessarily be assigned the responsibility of this task, but I want to be alerted when something happens with a task as well. Okay. Now, somebody mentioned that they put reminders on their calendar in Outlook.
Hey, Frank, I stop you 1 second before we hop in there. Just a question came up. If you are requesting an extension on a site, how do you track extensions? So hypothetically, so let's say you have a site investigation report. It's due on July 30th, and you're not going to get it done. So you've requested an extension from the state. Is there a way to input that, or do you have to go back to square one to retrack the dates?
No, that's actually a great question. So we factor that into the program as well. I think that was Dinashri that asked that.
Yep.
So Dinashri, what you can do actually is if you have an extension on a site, you can press this button right here, okay? And you can click on mandatory due date and you can extend it to whatever the extension was, essentially, and update the requirements. So you're not locked in with any of these things.
Frank, if there were dates, like say it's sampling for potable wells, say it's IEC report. If you change that date, will it go back and will it change all the other ones that are tied to that?
So there are specific dates which are involved in the calculation, right? And if you change one of those dates that are involved in the calculation, it changes all of the subsequent dates that are associated or derived from it. If you are just changing, let's say, if you want to just specify, let's say, this specific date, this regulatory date to be changed, you can do that as well and say, I just want this date to be changed. So for instance, a lot of our calculations are based on trigger date, okay? And if you change the trigger date, if you go back in and you edit this so that you change the trigger date, it will change all the calculations that come from that. But it's possible as well to go to any one of these individual dates and say, I just want this specific date changed. Don't change any of the other calculations, which is what we're doing with this button right here.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem, guys.
Sorry to introduce you. Interrupt. You were on the calendar. You're on the calendar. So
okay, very cool. Yeah. So please keep coming with questions if you guys have them, right? So what you can actually do, guys, is with the program, instead of having to manually build out your calendar, the program builds out the calendar for you. So we did that because, once again, we're trying to build something that accommodates the workflows of an environmental consultant. And although your workflows are kind of fragmented in the sense that everyone does it slightly different, there's universalities behind those workflows. So you guys may all track this in Excel, right? But you guys all track it in Excel in a slightly different way. You guys probably all use an Outlook calendar, but you put it into an Outlook calendar a slightly different way. So having just automated calculations and at the same time having a calendar that you guys can have built for you is just kind of us trying to automate the universalities behind your guys' workflows. So here we can see, for the calendar of June, exactly what's coming up in terms of due dates, right? You can see into the future as well and see what's coming up next beyond that, and what needs to be done. You can see this for your own projects or for your coworkers' projects. You can see it for individual projects, or you can see it for, the multitude of all your projects at once. There are some other things that I'll go into as well, real quick. The program, once again, we are designed to be a project management solution and designed to help solve the workflow of environmental consultants and LSRPs. The other thing that we noticed in the industry when we started building this software is that you guys, one universality is that you guys all track your budgets in spreadsheets. Okay, so we noticed that there were programs that existed to help you track your budgets, and they were almost all rejected by you guys, essentially, like because they were complex, because they were a little bit behind the times. I'm not saying anything pejorative about those platforms or anything like that, but what we did notice was that there was a lack of adoption. And so we built basically a budget tracking system that allows you to track create budgets the way that an environmental consultant creates them. You have this concept of multiple phases, and you can have as many phases as you like. You can have 10 million phases and 10 million change orders, which we saw a lot. You can bill out by task. You can also bill out by lump sum as well. You can specify that it's lump sum. And the result of this is that you're able to create dashboards that tell you if your project is over budget, essentially, right? So you can see what an original budget was, how much has been spent of it, what's remaining, and then you can see the individual phases of the project as well and say, how is this phase of the project doing budgetarily speaking? How is this individual task, let's say soil boring was a task, you can see how that soil boring is doing against the original budget. And there's different ways that this data is derived within the program. So it enables you to track your time as well. So if you click timesheets up here and we go to like Newark gas station, okay, I can add my time to a particular phase of the project. And I can say, I did 3 hours here, 1 hour here, 2 hours here. And I can add my time here. And Tim just asked a really smart question. It says, can it create invoices, and can it interface with incumbent accounting systems? And the answer is yes. The program creates invoices, which I'm going to show you right now, and we built it to create invoices the exact way that an environmental consultant creates them. And then it interfaces currently with QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. Although we're building out more integrations all the time because that's what we do. We build stuff. And so the hours have been added here to the Newark gas station. And then I'm going to show what Tim requested, which was this invoice creation process, right? So we click on receivables invoice and we say add new invoice. And we type in the Newark gas station here and the dates that are associated with the invoice that we want to create. We add the invoice here and you can select the hours that you want added, right? So let's say we want to add not all the hours, but some of the hours we just submitted. We confirm time right there. And then we can also add time for multiple different phases as well. So we're going to go to phase 2 here, and we're going to add a couple of hours here that were submitted. And then you get what you see here is that every step up here is a step in the way you guys create invoices. So first we add our labor, right? Next, we're going to add our subcontractors to the invoice. And we say, let's add a subcontractor to the invoice. And we say, okay, this is $1,000 for this subcontractor, Jenkins Drilling. What date was it received? What are the payment terms? When was it paid? And what phase of the project is it being added to? Then you can add it to the invoice here. And you can override names, because that's one of the problems we saw with the incumbent systems is you couldn't necessarily override names very easily. And say we don't want to say the name of the subcontractor, we just want to call this drilling services. And the other thing that we saw where accounting systems come up short is that you guys oftentimes do markups on invoices, and the incumbent systems were a little bit complex. There was a lot of work that went into the pre-existing general ledger systems to track this stuff. And you can just mark it up in our system and say it's a 20% markup. From there, you can add expenses as well. So if you had like an expense, let's say it's like travel expense of $100, you can add that expense and you can override the name of it as well and say this was a toll expense. Okay. and you want to do a markup on that, you can as well. From there, you go to the designer portion of things, and you can see that the hours that we added have been added. Okay. The subcontractor payables have been added to the receivables invoice with the markup. The client can't see what the markup is. You can see the toll expense as well has been added. And then the formatting of the invoice is designed to be intuitive. So basically you can just click buttons and add what you want to the invoice without it getting overly complex, right? You can show the services dates as well. You can do a labor breakdown. It creates attachments. I know a lot of you guys probably don't mess with this stuff at your firms because you guys are scientists. You guys are out in the field. You guys are managing projects, and the invoice thing is never seen. It is a problem though that does exist at environmental consulting firms, and we are working to solve the problems that exist universally throughout the entire universe of environmental consulting. And this was another problem that we saw, essentially, that it was just really, really, really hard to create budgets for you guys. You guys were all doing it in Excel and then sending it back to the accounting people. And then the accounting people were having to do, voodoo with the general ledger system to get the invoices working. And so the result of all this stuff, guys, is that you on the front end as environmental consultants and LSRPs are going to be able to see in real time where your budget's at after those changes have been made. You can just see universally how things have changed in the budget in real time. Like if you were sitting looking at this budget while I was making those changes on the back end, you'd be seeing your budget change in real time, essentially.
Frank, question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Now, is any of this, you said it's linked to QuickBooks. QuickBooks
Yeah.
also includes bank account information relative to accepting payments when invoices are paid, as well as paying vendors. Is that in here, or is that just staying QuickBooks?
So those invoices that indicate when a vendor has been paid are actually created in this system. So when we added that driller to that invoice, it also created a payables invoice as well, right? Because we had $1,000 bill that went that we marked up by 20% for that driller for Jenkins Drilling. It creates a payables transaction, and that gets exported out to QuickBooks as well.
How about the income on the invoice being paid? I guess my ultimate question is, if you are a user in the software for your project management, can you also see the finances of the company?
Yes. Wait, no. So you can divide up who can see what within the platform.
That was the question. Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah. And then seeing whether or not an invoice has been paid, if a user has those permissions, you can actually see, you can indicate in our system if the invoice has been paid. I mark this one as paid here, and then that gets exported out to QuickBooks as well.
Can you run through the admin side so we can see how that's done, and also the reporting that's available?
Yeah, sure. So from an administrative standpoint, you can control what users are in the platform, the different roles that exist, and the limitations that they have in terms of being able to access the platform. You can have default settings, right, which will show your company logo on your different types of invoices. And then you're able to create, for instance, default settings for, let's say, different rates that roles have within your company. So, a project manager may have a different rate than a field tech. For instance, at your organization, you can set defaults here so that when those people add their time, their rate can be auto-associated with them or not. You can divvy up the different types of projects that you have. You can divvy up the different kinds of clients that you have. I didn't even touch upon that. I won't dig too deep into every nook and cranny of the platform, but the program tracks all of your contacts for you as well. So if you have, if you want to track, for instance, who your lenders are that you've worked with, or who the insurance companies are, or who the subcontractors are, you have the ability to create this within the program and track it as well. You can have different types of templates, like I mentioned before, for task tracking. You can put tags with the different types of tasks. I mean, there's really a lot you can do in the way of being an administrator in controlling, what the look and feel of the software, because everybody's slightly different. Like I talked about the universalities in terms of the workflows. We realize that there are things that are consistent, like everybody does their budgets in Excel, everybody tracks their tasks in Excel, everyone does their timeframes in Excel, but you guys all do that a little bit differently in Excel, right? So we needed a program that, covered your workflow while simultaneously gave you guys the flexibility to be unique in how you operate that technology. So we gave a lot of administrative capacity or capability, I should say, to the admin users on the back end, essentially to control how the software actually works. So,
another question, some people are texting me, is how often do you do updates? How often is the software in any maintenance mode, or how about that type of work?
Yeah, so we push code every week. And it's kind of the crazy thing about software development is that as time has gone on, software evolution has happened faster and faster and faster. When I first moved out to San Francisco, we would change the software every 3 months, right? Not this program, but the programs that existed. Every 4 times a year, you would change the software. Before that, you went from Windows 95 to Windows 98. It was every several years. Then people started changing software every month. Then it went to every week. And now there's firms out there that change software daily. Like they update the software daily, like almost multiple times a day. And the experience for the end user when we push code, in our case, we do it every week, is that you'll never see it. On Monday, when you log in, there'll be things you can do on Monday that you couldn't do on Friday. And we push the code in the middle of the night, essentially. Cool. Good question.
Yep. And I guess if you can, so we're at about 9:15 right now. If anybody has any questions, please let us know. A question did come through right now. Can you speak of the security of the platform?
Yeah. So so the program is extremely secure. We are a security first platform. We are hosted on AWS, and every single tenant has their own isolated server, which is really weird. Like a lot of times, and that's not really weird, but it's unique in the sense that when you use software, they typically give you, make you share a server with your competitors. And we don't do that. Like you have your own isolated server that has its own unique database on AWS. And then we pay for MongoDB Atlas, which is the highest level of security you can have with a database. It's got the highest level of encryption. Everything is SSL encrypted as well. And then the result of these factors, not only are things more secure, but there's kind of unique benefits to you as a user having your own database. For instance, is that you get unlimited document storage as well. So we noticed that people were, you guys were generating huge amounts of data, like insane amounts, terabytes of data with all of your maps and everything. And so we structured it so not only could you be more secure by having your own database, you can have unlimited document storage as well within our program, and you can move all your documents to the cloud and have access to them through there as well, which was one of the cool things that was derivative of our objective of trying to make the program as secure as possible, for sure.
Yeah. So the question came in, what would be the approximate cost for a company with 10 LSRPs for the software?
Yeah, so the more LSRPs that the more people you have on the platform, the cheaper it becomes per user. So with 10 LSRPs, it's essentially $3,600 for the year, essentially. So it's $30 per user per month in that instance.
Is that the fee? So it's $30 per user per month. Is that a flat fee? How it works? Is there a setup fee? Are there any other fees?
Yeah, so there's no other fees, right? So essentially, the list price is $50 per user per month, but there's tiers that people hit as they increase their number of users. And if you have 10 or more users, then it drops to $30 per user per month. But there's no implementation fees at all. And one of the things that we do, because we just want to build, we want to build relationships with people, like and just network with people in the space. And you guys all know each other. That's what we've learned from doing this, is everybody knows everybody and everyone has worked for everyone else. Is we basically set up everything for you guys. So when you log into the platform, your first day, you're going to see that all of your cases have been downloaded from Data Miner. So we get, you give us your PI numbers essentially, and we go and we set everything up. So when you start using the timeframes, it's all there for you, right? If you send us a list of your projects, we set up all the different projects in the system as well. So when you log in, you see all your projects as well, and there's no fee for that whatsoever. So we've been doing a lot in the way of data population. We've built some pretty cool programs that do this stuff for you, which has been fun.
Well, that's pretty amazing. Well, so it's almost a turnkey experience when you sign up.
Yeah, so Tim's saying, wait, you harvest data from Data Miner? Yeah, so we don't have access to their API because it's not something that's easy to get access to per se, but we just basically go in there and set everything up for you guys. So
that's pretty cool. And what's two things? One is what's a normal turnaround time if somebody says, hey, I want to contract with you, you send over whatever the contract might be. What's the time frame from that day to, I'm assuming there's some kind of training that you run. How much is how do you run that through? And then when are we up and running?
Yeah, so it depends on the number of projects you have, but it's usually a couple weeks. Like from the time that somebody says like, okay, I want to start using your software, we say, okay, we get you signed up for it. And then from there, we need the user, the person that's using the program, needs time to send us their list of projects. And then we need time on our end to get it all from Data Miner. So that usually takes a couple of weeks. And there's also meetings that we have in between where we coach people on it, right? We don't want you to be alone with the program. Like, once again, we want people to be using it, to be enjoying it. And so that requires sometimes that we get on the phone and answer any questions that user might have. And there's no limitation in terms of how much access you get to us. You get to talk to me and Adam and Jake all you like. So anytime you're having a problem, you just call our cell phones. And the joke we always make is that it's easier to get a hold of somebody at a 6-person startup than it is at a company that has 6,000 people. And I'm not really sure like why that is, but it always is the case, is that the quality of support when companies have achieved this massive scale isn't there compared to a startup that's like us that focuses on a niche industry. So you call us, jump on the phone with us, and we'll help you out with your problems when you're going through that ramp, essentially.
Okay. Question came in: LSRP projects frequently go with the LSRP when they leave one firm, unless the owner of the company doesn't allow them to do that, and go to another. I added that in there, or go to another firm or retire. Is there a way to easily duplicate information to switch over?
So it's an interesting concept, and we've seen this with people that have switched firms while they're on the program, is they want the ability to just recreate their projects. And it's something we end up helping them do when they've switched firms, essentially. So it's a matter of just getting that data into the system. We've seen this as well. We've seen different users try to have their own personal instance of this software for that exact reason, for when they switch firms, essentially.
I'm trying to think what else what else didn't we cover? I interrupted you before, so we have about 10 minutes. You started to go through reporting, and then
yeah,
cut you off.
Yeah, guys. So let me go see here. So from a reporting standpoint, so you can see general reports, which is just like a list of different projects by status, projects by team member, different tasks that can do. You can see compliance related reports, which show you across all of your different projects, what are the remedial report requirements? What are the permit deadlines? You can have accounting related reports. So if you want to see things like, okay, what are my profits and loss? What are my expenses? What are my account receivables, account payables? You can see that. You can see your timesheets as well. And you can see your time by user as well. So reporting is one of those areas where, we see an opportunity to add more and more functionality. And like basically what we're doing as we go along is we've had, 50 companies in Jersey now at this point, at least 50 sign up in the past several months for the program. We just kind of iterate based on what you guys want. So as people ask us to add reports, we've been adding them, which has been pretty effective. We also have this universal dashboard up here that allows you to see the data in different ways. So if you want to, for instance, see like a filter that tells you on a particular project, let's say, show me all my due diligence projects, the program will show you that. Or if you wanted to have, let's say, show me all my proposed projects, or show me all of my active projects, the program will do that. Or show me all the projects that have a start date, of a particular date. There's all sorts of filters that you can run as well. And then I didn't even get into this, but it auto produces Gantt charts for you as well. So you can see exactly like what your workload is going to look like going into the future. You might have a lot of projects you're working on simultaneously. And then if you look down the line on this report, you can see, you have additional bandwidth happening in the mid-September as well. So yeah, let me see here. Are there any other questions? Cool.
That was all the ones that came in. I mean, this is pretty amazing. I mean, it's something that I think is totally brand new to our industry. And I think it seems like you've really covered all of your bases. I commend you for doing that. It seems like a great software. And really, I want to go back to something you said before. So that Tim's asking for those people who are using it on the call, give us your feedback. So don't read the comments anymore, Frank.
Okay, no, it's because it's something that, like, so far it's been overwhelmingly, like, we're pretty enthusiastic about the market response and the industry response. And, it in areas where people have said, hey, I want this into the program, it'd be great if you had this, we've been able to incorporate it. So it serves as a medium of us being able to improve the technology. So the feedback is awesome. So it's a good question for sure.
Hey, Frank,
yeah.
George, first of all, I'm glad to be able to join you. My ability to master technology stopped the retractable ballpoint pen. So at any rate, New Jersey is a regulatory intensive state. Not all the other 50 states are nearly as wedded to these timeframes and regulations that DEP promulgates. What other states do you see that are fertile targets for you? And do you have a state that's really been involved with this for quite a while?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So ones that come immediately to mind are obviously Connecticut, and then the LSRP program. It seems like it was based on the LSP program over in Massachusetts as well. So those states come to mind as well. But I mean, it goes beyond just the compliance piece of things as well, right? Like, if you look at us from a roadmap standpoint, there's so much that needs to be built for you guys. Laboratory data management. Like, once again, everybody manages that data and massages it in Excel. You all do it slightly different, but that's one of those universal workflows we talked about. You guys need something that can help you guys do that. A portal to manage like your contractors and your subcontractors and your clients and the regulators, and being able to coordinate all people in one place with the documents and everything. That's something that needs to be built, right? Proposal writing, right? ESAs, like how you guys, your report writing as well, proposal writing, report writing. I mean, the list of things that goes on and on, the fact that there hasn't been, a universal technology, a universal solution to help you guys, like, it's evident in the fact that everyone has to do everything in Excel all the time, right? And it's kind of interesting, because it's like, it's being an LSRP, it's one of the few jobs where the expectation is that you are perfect. Like, that really blew our minds, especially in the state of New Jersey. Like, the expectation is that you guys don't make mistakes ever. And there's literally nothing helping you guys with that. So, I mean, you asked a really, really, really smart question. there, and that is like, what states are as hard as New Jersey? I'm willing to bet none. And that's why we started in New Jersey, is that it was this incredibly complex environment that was incredibly difficult to meet the standards with, and there was nothing for you guys. So this is just an opportunity, for you guys to help yourselves, essentially, for us to work, like help each other, essentially, in the sense that, we specialize in creating really good software. We always have. And, there isn't anything that's meeting that need for you guys as LSRPs, essentially. And, hopefully it's something that helps, the industry as a whole. So.
Frank, and I just want to clarify or ask a question that something you had commented on. So you're saying that in the document file area,
Yeah,
that you have created it where we have unlimited size?
yeah, you have unlimited document storage, free forever in the cloud. So if you need to add documents, you can. And I mentioned, like being able to, like, let's say you need to upload this drill receipt there. You can upload the drill receipt, you can reference it, you can see that information in our system, and it's obviously stored at the project level. So if you ever get audited in the future and you need to know what happened with this particular project, you can go back and you can see all the documents that were associated with it.
So really in the world that we're living in today, where our servers are on the cloud and, we're doing, remote work and things, and, you're really eliminating our costs to document saving by putting it all into here. Is that what
Yeah.
I'm understanding?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Another great point. Okay.
Mm.
What was this? Benzie just wrote a thesis.
Did you grade it yet, Phil?
Yeah, you know me, I'm not grading thesis papers, but so we are at 9:27. Do we have any other questions that have come in? I don't see any. It looks like Ben has given you a big thumbs up, working with 3 LSRPs. I think you've produced something that is definitely not only economical, but a great support. Looks like Adam has woken up. So welcome, Adam.
Hey, Phil.
Yes, George.
I'm going to do my introduction.
Do your introduction.
Phil, I don't know if you talked about how we came to bring Frank to the table with this particular program.
I did not.
But I think when I was approached by Frank, I was very impressed. I was wowed. The only previous time I've ever been wowed was on the first time I saw my wife and I coming out of a car, and I married her, and we've been together 40 years. So at any rate, Phil and I labored over the issue of there was a conflict of interest at all. And clearly, if this is like Alpha giving a free seminar on PFAS, as far as we're concerned, there is no financial inducement to us to do this, except the only inducement is to provide you guys with tools that make you better LSRPs. I absolutely agree with Frank. We just did a compliance seminar, or a course. What you guys are responsible for, technical guidance alone is over 4,000 pages. No, I'm sorry. Technical guidance is over 3,000 pages. With the administrative guidance, it approaches 6,000 pages. So my point simply is that this type of tool enables us to limit our risks, maximize our client service, and enables us to do a better job as LSRP. So I wanted to make sure that people understand that there was no financial connection with us and Frank's firm. And we did this again, totally to be a service. I have a follow-on suggestion that I'll like to talk to Frank and Phil about offline, but I think this is a wonderful tool that'll keep us out of trouble. And I like the idea that this, you don't have to, Phil, you don't have to bury your records with you alongside your grave next time.
You just have to give somebody access to your username and password. Yeah. So go for it. Go.
Oh, real quick. Yeah. So if you guys want to learn more about it, I definitely appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to talk to the industry and all the LSRPs. We're grateful for that. I put our website there. There's a link to it. So if you guys are interested in learning more about it, or you want to request a more in-depth demo where we show you everything in the software, you can click on that link. You can request a demo. We're happy to jump on the phone with you guys again. It's, you know, we love the people we love working with the people that are in this business. So like, you know, reach out to us anytime for sure.
And a reminder, this is recorded. So if you need to walk into your boss's office and sell them on this, or say that Frank said this, Frank said that, and they said there's no way that can happen, you can have them watch the video. It'll be up on our website probably by later this afternoon, if not tomorrow morning. And our website is in the chat, just if you need to find it, that's there. And again, you know, Frank, really appreciate your time. George, sorry we had an issue this morning, but I got to figure out what happened and we'll work on that.
No, it was my computer. Phil, I do want to add one other thing. The board has recognized that administrative issues relative to the performance of an LSRP are very important. Therefore, you can now get credit. I guess about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, this happened. You can get credit for continuing education credits for administrative courses that allow you to do your job better as an LSRP, but they have to be approved by the board.
Yeah, and that change will be in the board rules, which hopefully will be approved by November of this year. So, okay. Frank, thank you for all your time.
Frank, thank you so much.
You guys are
Everybody stay
awesome.
safe, be well out there. Everyone be well.